Immigration attorney Kate Lincioln-Goldfinch joins us from Austin, Texas, to shed some light on the humanitarian aspect of this border crisis. Kate, explain to us what some of these migrants go through to get to the United States and the kind of money they spend, often giving that money to smugglers to get here.
Sure. Many of the migrants that we're seeing now are from South and Central America, and they're fleeing political persecution from countries like Nicaragua, Venezuela, or gang violence from the Northern Triangle of Central America. So many of them have taken a long, arduous journey through South and Central America in the hopes of getting to the United States. And as you mentioned, they may have spent money to a smuggler to help get them up here, or they may have made it on their own. But what I can share is that it is a very difficult and dangerous journey. And by the time that most of these people have arrived at our border, they have already been through things that are unimaginable to most of us.
So what happens when they actually get on U.S. soil? Walk us through the process.
Sure. And the issue is that is a little uncertain, and it is changing, because for 20 years we had a system in which asylum seekers could present at the border, they could ask to be screened for asylum, and they would be temporarily detained and put through a credible fear interview. And that was a functioning system that wasn't perfect, but it was an orderly, stable, dignified, relatively way to process asylum seekers. And we completely shut that down in 2020 under Title 42 during the pandemic. Since May of last year, it has been partially lifted in certain circumstances with certain people, but there are certain caveats, like someone has to use the CBP-1 app in order to be processed. Meanwhile, many of them are desperate. They're refugees in Mexico, and they're subject themselves to gang violence there. So right now, it depends on the moment, it depends on the day, it depends on how the person was
And I think
processed,
that's part of the problem, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And my experience, having done this work for 15 years and working with thousands of asylum seekers, is that as soon as we can get back to an orderly, structured, predictable way that we can screen asylum seekers, we're going to see things calm down at the border. It's a lot of this changing policy that really creates rumors, and there's rumors on all sides. A lot of the facts and figures that lead people to, take a convoy down to the border are not based in reality.
And what goes through your mind when you see these convoys of protesters who say they're trying to prevent an invasion by migrants?
A few things come to mind. I've been to Eagle Pass a couple of times recently. I spoke to about 30 migrants at a shelter a few weeks ago, and the stories that they told me would break your heart. They were parents whose children had been murdered by the cartels, and they filed police reports, and they themselves were targeted. They had just gone through unimaginable things that drove them to come to the border. And if anyone could do what I did and spend just an afternoon in conversation with these people, it would change everything, because the reality is they're so brave. They're so impressive to get themselves into this situation. And, the other thing that comes to mind is that I think that the last time I went down to the border, there was a group of migrants being held in the staging area, and the media was invited to come and set up their cameras, and a congressman had a podium placed there by Border Patrol while these migrants were I counted 4 of them being carried out having fainted for lack of water and food, while the congressman is simultaneously accusing them of smuggling drugs into the country. And it's maddening that these words are being said that are not true. The statistics show migrants are not bringing fentanyl into the country. That's not accurate, and yet that's the rhetoric that's said out there by certain politicians, and people believe it and get themselves into a convoy and, worked up into a frenzy, when in fact these migrants are desperate people who need our help. And sure, we need ways to bring calm to the border, but we also need to consider this from a humanitarian perspective.
100%. Kate, thank you very much.